everybody. Welcome to Seneca Studios School of Glass. Thank you for joining us for our August Open Studio Night. We're happy to have you here. We are having two of our instructors in the Flameworking Studio this evening. Nick Gomez is in the blue, one of our flameworking instructors, and Nolan Bishop in the yellow is one of our glassblowing instructors. It's super soft. This evening they're going to be working collaboratively to create a unique glass flamework hand that will be holding a figurative form. Seneca Studios is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're dedicated to education. Both of our flameworkers this evening are also instructors that teach here at Seneca, and at any point, if you guys have any questions about anything that you see, let us know. Nick Gomez teaches primarily in the flameworking studio, but has some glassblowing experience. His Instagram, you can look up some of his amazing work on his Instagram at Gomez Glass. Nolan Bishop is also an instructor at Seneca Studios, and he predominantly teaches in the glassblowing studio, and he makes really awesome figurative work as well, and you can look him up at Nolan Art on Instagram. So, welcome everyone. My name is Tatara. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at Seneca Studios. I'm known for being pretty honest around this organization, so I'm going to be real honest with you guys. I am new to the tech era and doing this type of work for our studio, so bear with me on the cameras. I'm going to do my best to try to make sure I plug in all the appropriate words and information needed so you guys can have a really enjoyable experience. So flameworking is really fascinating area of study, a discipline. For those of you that don't know, both Nick and Nolan are working independently on their own torches. These torches are a mixture of propane and oxygen. These specific torches is what's called a surface mixture, where those two elements mix just beyond the torch head. It allows for the flame to get very, very hot so that you can create some really interesting specific heating areas in the glass they're using. The specific glass that they're using is called borosilicate. It's known as a hard glass. For those of you, it's also and so what you're noticing is Nick here in the blue has a tube that appears to go around his neck. It's connected to that piece of glass tubing that is in his hand. And the idea is he's able to localize the heat in a very specific way and blow into the glass to where only that one area is able to move. And what he's doing is he's starting to sculpt a hand. So what he initially started with was a very large bubble that he then used a flat piece of graphite to squish that bubble and to make it a little bit on the flatter side. Allows him to create kind of that look for a flattened hand, and now he's localizing the heat to try to start the sculpting process of that hand. Nolan in the yellow is studying the color application for what will eventually be the figurative form. Nolan's right hand is applying the pigment to his left hand by keeping the material in the torch and rotating his hand so that it works itself around the spherical form of glass that he's holding. One of the really nice things about flame working, and especially when you flame work borosilicate glass, is that you have a little bit of time to process your thoughts and to sculpt with a little bit more ease, if you will, because the specific nature of this medium molecularly allows for the glass to heat and cool without severe stress points. So if you notice, Nick the graphite chair, that little black chair that he just rolled, or he's rolling that glass on, is called a marver. Allows him to shape and cool the glass. Because he is trying to build heat up, you'll notice he won't spend too much time on that tool, but basically just to keep and maintain kind of a cylindrical form, so that when he pulls the glass and stretches it, it will pull and stretch into cylindrical form. Nick, on the other torch, has been working on this hand. He's done a technique called bridging. He's added these kind of small, skinny pieces of glass. And if you notice, he's started to add an appendage. The small, skinny piece of glass allows for him to add appendages and connect to the hand so that they're no longer in motion. It will allow him to build up heat without having to fight gravity. Eventually those bridges will be removed, but for now he keeps them so that he can create the shape that he's looking for. Nolan is continuing to build heat into that piece of glass, and you notice it's starting to look a little bit more cylindrical. Flame working is a very patient discipline. It requires a lot of adjustments, but little adjustments, and then maintaining that heat in the borosilicate glass. So you notice the fellas, they'll work a little bit in the heat, they'll bring the glass outside of the heat, they'll look at it, they'll add a little bit, and then back into the heat. You notice Nolan's hands are starting to separate from one another. He's really focusing on where the heat needs to be while he's separating his hands, so that this will pull in a hopefully even, consistent way. Hard to see, but there is color on the inside of this pretty floppy looking. So right now they're about to pull and stretch. You see Kevin's helping down in the purple, and Nolan in the yellow, and they're gonna stretch that piece of glass in between themselves to a diameter that's desired, and then they will set it down on the floor and allow it to cool before they can pick it up and use it. So you see they're going to walk over. They have little boards so that it doesn't crack hitting the cold concrete. But we're going to be honest, people, there's nothing cold about anything in that studio. It's August in Texas. But it allows for the glass to not go through a thermal shock. Let's see what Nick's doing. Nick's just straightening up that thumb, trying to get it as even as possible. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shout them out. Do my best to answer them for you. So if you've ever had any interest, or if you've ever had a bucket list of, oh, I want to blow glass, or I want to play with glass, Seneca Studio offers all those programs for you to come and to try. We have 3 different disciplines here on site. A discipline is an area of study. And so right now what you're seeing is 2 of our flame working, 1 flame working instructor and a hot shop instructor working in the glass blowing studio. but they are working on flame working equipment, and so the torch and the small annealers. We also offer kiln forming, which is our third discipline. It is a cold manipulation process. It is done in a different room in this building, and it is where you take pieces of glass you can cut and assemble, then put them into an oven and turn that oven on to about 1500 degrees, and everything will solidify into one shape, one form. So it really just depends what you're interested in and what you like. Some people really fascinated with molten glass. Other people are scared to death. If you're scared to death, I'd say at least come try it once, and then if it's not for you, definitely jump back into our kiln forming studio and take some of those cold manipulation classes, because it is super fun. So we can see Nick has removed that bridge. He's gotten the thumb where he wants it to be. He's no longer going to add heat to that thumb. And so now he's going to start to really focus on the other fingers and think about how he's going to sculpt those other fingers. So as you can see, Nick is working to start to create the shape and the form of the knuckles. And Nolan has come back and he has pulled some colored glass out of the annealer that has been warm, staying warm. And he is going to, what appears to be, add more pigment to that glass. So you see in the background, Nick is opening and closing that annealer. He's placed that hand in that annealer, I think because he needed a little bit of a water break. And so we always put the glass in a warming oven. We put the glass in a warming oven to cool down slowly, but if we're in process making something, we can put the glass in a warming oven. That way it'll stay at a certain temperature and there won't be any stress that is being built up in the glass, so that when the flame workers are ready, they can just go and grab that sculpture they've been working on out of the annealer and continue to work on it. And so Nick has been handed some glass blowing sculpting tools that he is going to use to try to help create the form of the hand. Nolan is applying more color, and I believe he's going to pull more cane. Something that's really fascinating about a flame working torch is, first and foremost, flame working torches, there are so many different types of flame working torches that you can use. They have different shaped burner heads. They have different center focal points of where the heat comes out. They have diameters that regulate how much of the gas is mixed and how much heat is produced, so you can heat large areas of the glass. They also have little burner heads attached to them, as well as the majors, so that you can really do fine detail work, or you can do large surface. And so another really fascinating thing about flame working is when you're looking at the flame. For those of us who work in glass or work around in other craft media that has fire associated with it, the color of the flame and the shape of the flame is what's really fascinating. You notice that the piece that you're looking at now that Nick is working, the area of the flame that's closest to him when he's touching that glass is almost like a white, a blue, and then the area beyond it is that kind of yellow orange. Because these are a mixture of oxygen and propane, you can control in a very easy way not only how hot the flame is, but how rich in oxygen or how rich in propane the flame is. And one of the most fascinating things to me watching a flame worker is understanding how to use that control to allow the glass to manipulate the way you want it to. And so, for example, a flame that is propane based, propane being like what you hook your grill that you grill food on to, if you would use just a propane flame on the glass, it would create a level of or a layer of soot, and the glass would turn black, and it actually wouldn't even melt. Every glass has a COE, a coefficient of expansion. That's the rate at which the glass expands and contracts. And every glass does this at a very specific rate. And so by mixing the oxygen in with the propane, it allows for that flame to change into a very unique color, which is kind of that white blue, which makes it hot enough to be able to, on a molecular level, get this glass, borosilicate, to expand and contract. Glass in general is very similar to your muscles. And if you think about when you work your muscle out, when you exercise, your muscles get warm, your body temperature increases, your heart rate increases, and your muscles will actually look larger. They will physically grow in size. And then, of course, when you stop working out and you're going through your cool down phase, the muscle will actually go back to its normal size. The blood will rush out of it. And the glass is very similar. When it gets hot, it expands on a molecular level, and it gets larger. And then when it cools down, everything shrinks. And so it's very similar with the torch as well. You can see that when the glass is not in the torch, it looks blue, and then all of a sudden you touch it to the glass, or the glass touches the flame, and it turns fluffy and orange. And so there are a lot of similarities and metaphors that we use in making art and teaching people about art so that they can better understand the process of what's happening. Because glass, this idea of gravity and motion and liquid movement is foreign to most people, it makes it easy from an education standpoint when we can associate it with something that you do in your everyday life, right? And so what we like to tell people is, yes, that flame is hot, and yes, it's very dangerous, but it's propane, like you use in your Hi everyone, sorry we're having some audio technical difficulties. Give me 1 sec, I'm trying to work this out. I haven't been talking the whole time, but I have been talking here and there, and so let's start over. Welcome everybody to our open studio night for August. During August, our hot shop is shut down, and so this month we offer our open studio night to flame workers. Tonight we have Nick Gomez and Nolan Bishop. Nick Gomez and Nolan both work as independent artists on the flameworking torch, and Nick Gomez is our flameworking instructor here at Seneca Studios, and Nolan is one of our hot shop instructors. Tonight they're working collaboratively in the flameworking studio. They're creating a hand sculpture or a hand fist sculpture that has a figure attached to it, and they will be adding little bits of color and shaping here and there. Flameworking is a fantastic discipline. It is one of 3 disciplines that we offer here at Seneca Studios School of Glass. Seneca Studios is a nonprofit dedicated to education. We teach 3 different disciplines. Think of a discipline as an area of study. The flameworking is a molten process. We're using a glass, hard glass called borosilicate glass. We're using these torches that you see that are producing these blue flames. That is a mixture of propane and oxygen, a surface mix that creates that flame, and it creates the ability for that flame to get hotter than just a propane flame, so that we can actually manipulate the borosilicate glass. Seneca Studios is dedicated to education, so if at any point during the demonstration you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and hopefully we can relay them back to me so that we can answer some of your questions. For those of you who have been watching the demo, thanks for sticking around. Sorry about the audio issues. For those of you who are just joining us, Nick and Nolan have been flameworking for the better part of 4 to 5 years individually. Flameworking is a fantastic studio. It requires equipment, but it is also something that you can do at home and have a little setup in your garage if you want. Seneca also does offer classes in this discipline, and although it looks like they're making things that are really technical and challenging, that is true. They in fact are. So we won't be able to teach you those things. However, if you come to Seneca, we will teach you how to make pendants and beads and things along a kind of more of a beginner's fundamental standpoint, so that you can play with this amazing material in this discipline. Glassblowing is the practice of shaping a mass of glass that has been softened by heat by blowing air into it through a tube. And so what you're noticing is Nick is doing just that. And instead of having a stainless steel pipe, he actually is holding the glass tube and is allowing the heat to go in very specific places so that he can then inflate it with his breath. What's really helpful in the flameworking studio is the ability to localize the heat. And so if you notice in the video, Nick is able to only heat one area while the rest of the object stays stagnant. This is something in the glassblowing studio and in kiln forming is very challenging because of the way that we manipulate the equipment in those studios. You tend to heat the whole thing. The glass that he's working with, a borosilicate glass, known as a hard glass, is also fantastic because on a molecular level it has been manufactured to be able to heat and cool, expand and contract without going through a serious thermal shock to where it would crack. If you think about the glass that you use at home that you put in your oven goes, let's say, to a boil, 500 degrees. You put your Pyrex in there, you heat up your food, you take it out, you stick it onto the stove, that glass does not crack. And that is because it has been molecularly modified to be able to withstand the expansion and the contraction of the heat and not go through stress. And so the glass they're using is in fact that same glass or formula borosilicate. and it's really a wonderful to work with. However, it does require, as you can see in these videos of these torches, a significant amount of heat to be able to get it to move even just the littlest bit. At first, glass was blown into decorative molds, vessels that were shaped like shells, clusters of grapes, and human heads were a common object in early Syrian products. Later, the Syrian gaffers and the blowers produced natural spherical forms without using molds. This technique has remained pretty similar to present day. As you notice, Nick was heating and blowing, and also incorporating new tools to be able to shape and sculpt. So this history of glass is very deep, and the practice of shaping the glass while softening it was invented by a craftsman in Aleppo and Hama in the 1st century, and the vessels for everyday use and luxury use were produced commercially and exported all over the Roman Empire. And so one of the things that we pride ourselves in here at Seneca Studios is a little bit of education across the board when it comes to learning. So as I was saying, the history of glass is fascinating. It's rich. One of my favorite flame working artists are the Blashkas. If you look them up online, Blashka, B-L-A-S-C-H-K-A-H, I think is how it's pronounced. They did a study in the flame working studio of a series of botany examples that they flame worked over a candle lit flame, which is fascinating when you think about all the technology we have today, and they're the most exquisite things you've ever seen. And so glass as a whole, and what we do here at Seneca Studios is, yes, we give you an experience, yes, we have fun with you in creating unique objects, but we're also super passionate about the history of this material, because from when it began, when it was created till now, it's just absolutely amazing. And to think of a material that is very similar to something that a volcano produces, and then thinking about touching it with your hand and manipulating with your hand is just unbelievable. And so you notice Nolan is creating that female form, and you can see he's heating and stretching in a very specific way. And so if you ever come and you take a class from us here at Seneca Studios, we're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to you about glass. We're going to talk to you about the history of glass. We're going to talk to you about what artists do with glass these days. We're going to talk to you about the technical applications of glass. You know, maybe most of you don't realize it, but every time you drop your iPhone and you see that crack across the surface that costs $200 or $300 to replace, that is glass, and that is a scientist in a lab who's playing on a molecular level with this medium to be able to see how far you can actually push it. And you don't realize it. And what I tell as the education and outreach coordinator here at Seneca Studios, I tell people, you don't really realize how much you rely on glass until you stop and think about it. And so one thing that I really like to talk about is everyday practicality of glass. So you wake up in the morning, so first thing you go into a bathroom, right? What's the first thing you do after you use the facilities? Look in the mirror. Well, mirror is a chemical reaction that is put on a piece of glass to mirrorize it. Okay, what do you do after that? Go downstairs, right? Go into the kitchen, get something to eat, something to drink. Sometimes you grab a coffee cup, but if you want juice, you're going to grab a piece of glass, put some juice in it. Then from there, if you're like somebody like me, every morning, every waking moment, I use my eyeglasses to be able to see all day. After you have your juice, you put on your eyeglasses, read the paper, read your iPhone, go and you get into your car. Car is filled with architectural glass, right? And so then you go to work and so on and so forth. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that out of all the craft medias, out of all the mediums that we use every day, glass is one that we rely on heavily every day for just about every application of life. And when you think of it that way, it makes it pretty cool as a medium to be able to learn all about it in all different ways. So, fun facts about glass blowing. So, here we go, fun facts. Fun fact number 1, nature was the original glass blower. Lightning strikes on beaches produce thin glass rods called thalgarites, and over the centuries, volcanic eruptions have fused sand and rocks into obsidian. Fun fact, Phoenician sailors may have accidentally discovered glass. Pliny suggested that they unintentionally produced glass by building fires on blocks of soda on beach sand, though it's equally likely that glass was discovered by the Egyptians or Mesopotamian potters as they fired the clay. This is one of my favorite things because I have a background in ceramics, and so I find it fascinating. A lot of people think that they can go down to Galveston Coast and they can grab some sand and they can throw it into a pot and then put it into a kiln or an oven and try to turn it up to 2100 degrees. That is in fact not how you make glass. Yes, glass is a type of sand. If you look at our logo, and I'm going to pull that up for you guys. Our logo is one of the oldest formulas of glass: silica, sodium, and calcium. And when you take these elements that live on the periodic chart and you mix them all together, add a little magnesium, add a little phosphorus, you can actually get, and melt it at 2100 degrees, you can get glass. However, it requires a very specific ratio of all these elements to be able to take the sand to melt it to get the glass. So there are only very few deserts in the world that possess these elements at the exact ratios. And one of the things that I always am fascinated with, that I tell people, is the Egyptians, when they were creating these beautiful ceramic pots, the way they would make their kilns is they would actually dig into the dirt, into the sand, and create these kilns so that they could create and maintain temperatures with the firewood. And what they realized was, once you would bury the clay, you would fire it, the clay would go through its process of solidifying and becoming hard. Then you would dig it back up. Well, if you dug deeper beyond the clay where the wood was, you would actually, in fact, hit the glass. And Judaica glass is some of the oldest glass that is in existence, and it's actually over in Israel. And that is exactly how it was found. And we had some Israeli artists come to Seneca a few years ago to do a public art piece that we still have on our lot today. It's a giant magnolia flower. And one of the artists brought me a piece of Judaica glass, which was so impressive. And the way that she described these fields of what she described, these beautiful glowing rocks, well, it was in fact the natural shifting of these deserts, and that glass that was made then being uprooted into the surface. And she said there was a few of the property owners there that would allow them to come onto their property and to remove these historical ancient pieces of glass, and then what she would do is clean them and then recreate them into little Venus de Milo sculptures and things along those lines. And it's really quite fascinating as a fact, from a fun fact. Okay, should we do another fun fact? Glass is an amorphous solid, and no, that is not a contradiction in terms. It's solid, but it has a molecular structure that's random, like a liquid. The molecular structure is what makes it transparent. Light waves are able to penetrate it easily. It's a fun little Fun little time. Okay, one more fun fact. Here we go, one more fun fact, and we'll get back to the featured program. All right, let's see here. Let's get a good one. Fun fact. Okay, so one thing that's always fun as an educator here at Seneca Studios is when people come here to take workshops, they always get really excited. They want to take these workshops, and then oh, can I take my work home with me today? No. So glass, as fun as it looks like we're having, which we are, there is such a deep-rooted science-based understanding for this material. It is ridiculous. So in a very short explanation, glass has to go through the process of annealing. And so I explained this earlier, but I'll do it again. So let's bring it back to kind of every day in the home. So if you are to exercise and to work out a muscle, when you work that muscle out, you're expanding and the blood is rushing into that muscle, and it's actually making it physically larger. And so all your molecules, all your blood vessels, everything are expanding, right? When the glass heats up, it does a very similar process. All the molecules start to move around, they start to shift and expand and get larger. When the glass goes through its process of cooling down, very similar to how your muscle cools down, it will slowly start to lose the blood and to get smaller. Well, the process of annealing is that exact same. When you come to take a class with us, you'll blow your glass, you'll make your shape, you'll have your fun, but then we'll put that glass in a very specific cooling oven called an annealer. This allows the temperature to decrease from about 1,000 degrees down to room temperature over a series of hours. Basically, the stuff that you make here at Seneca, we don't want it to sit in the kiln or in the annealers for months. So we make things that are relatively thin, relatively small, and they cool down over the course of about 16 to 18 hours. The flame working glass that you see here, because it's been molecularly created and structured to go through that heating and expanding and cooling and compressing quicker, it doesn't require as long for it to go through the annealing process. But for example, 16 hours is a pretty safe amount of time for something to sit into an annealer. The lenses that you see in the space, those giant glass lenses that go on those telescopes, those tend to sit into a kiln, an annealing oven, for almost a year. So it's relative. Everything, just like in life, is relative. The thicker the glass, the bigger the glass, the longer it takes molecules to bind back together and for everything to solidify into its original form. And so that's a fun little fact that the annealing process takes a long time. So like I said earlier, Seneca Studios is a nonprofit dedicated to education, and we're really passionate here. We're really passionate people. Nick and Nolan here that are working to create this collaborative piece are actually donating their time and their efforts. And for those of you who are watching here at home, step outside. We are in a non-air conditioned facility, and so it is rather warm to be working in front of these things. So a big shout out and a thank you to Nolan and Nick for being here with us this evening. They're working on a collaborative piece, and sometimes flame workers will do that to be able to create scale in a quick way, because as you can tell, this process takes some time. Takes some time to heat to cool. And so what we're doing is watching them go through the process of creating a unique hand that will eventually house or hold a figure. And so Nick is working on the hand, as you see here, and Nolan in the yellow is working on sculpting the female, I believe it's a female form. Again, artists that come out of Seneca Studios, and most glass artists, most artists in general across the board, are extremely passionate about what they do, and as you can tell, very animated when we work, which always makes the job feel less hot or less stressful. One thing that glass isn't is forgiving. And so in working with glass and in the studios, if something breaks after working on it for 3, 5, 6 hours, we take that pretty personal. It's a lot of our energies and a lot of our passions. And so yes, it's fun, and most artists think it's fun and they enjoy what they do, but art is expensive. Art is laborious. You notice Nolan has hurt his wrist working in the flame. And so, a big part of what we do is here at Seneca Studios is offer the opportunity for self-expression, the opportunity to try something new, the opportunity to engage with us, to engage with this material, to find why we love this material so much. And all you have to do is come take a class with us and you'll be a believer, because it's just a fantastic, fantastic medium. And so let's go back, see what Nick's doing. And so if you have any interest, or if you ever want to do this type of working or take any of our other classes, you can always look us up. Seneca Studios School of Glass, and look us up on the internet and look at all of our classes. You can always call and talk to one of our staffers about the classes we offer. Again, if you are also interested as from an educator, you want to bring this into your school and you want to have your students get engaged and get involved, you can also reach out to me. My name is Tatar Siegel, Education and Outreach Coordinator here, and I'm happy to facilitate getting you guys to come in or coming to your school to work with you guys. But we are a nonprofit, and we do require support financially, support physically, support, volunteer based. We do a lot of different things here at Seneca Studios, which is why when people come in, oh, what do you guys do here? Well, we do a lot. We do a lot to public engagement activities, to open studio night where we house visiting artists, to fundraisers to help support some of our outreach programming, our philanthropic programming. We do visiting artist series where we bring artists in from all over the country to come and to engage with our community. We work with our community as a place for people to escape from their jobs, to come and to just relax and to engage in this material. And so we do a lot of different things. And fortunate / unfortunately, glass is very expensive, and you can kind of get an idea why. It takes a while to learn how to manipulate this material. And so to be proficient at it, you have to spend quite a bit of time learning about kind of the fundamentals. And so just like anything else, to get good at it, you have to put in those hours. So Nick looks like he's got his pointer finger on. Nolan looks like he's heating up to pull what's called pulling a point. So he's going to heat the center of that. He's going to separate his arms. The glass will thin out. It'll allow him to create a tiny, smaller diameter area where he will be able to blow into, I think. We're gonna kind of put that little I think there because I'm not outside in the studio with him, so I don't know for certain, but I think that's what it looks like he's doing. Yeah, so that's called, oops, missed it. Sorry, guys. That's called pulling a point, what you see Nolan doing there. He heated up the glass and then came out of the flame, separated his arms, and the glass thinned out into a very small diameter tube. And then he will be able to separate those two by creating a stress point and breaking it in half. So instead of breaking it, he's going to use the heat to separate it. So he's going to heat it and pull. Nick has picked up his hand torch. You notice the difference in this is that it's literally attached to his hand, so he can animate and add specific heat to very, very specific angle that he might not be able to get on his torch. It could be a little dangerous when it comes to heating, and so he can use that little hand torch. All right, so Nolan's pulled his point. He's separated the two. He's gonna separate that tiny hollow, skinny hollow tube from the big tube. Maybe not. So Nick is adding some detail. See what Nolan's doing. Looks like he's gonna try to pull another point, maybe? So welcome for those of you who are just tuning in. This is our open studio night demonstration. During August, the hot shop is shut down, and so we feature flame workers typically for this open studio night. Today we have Nolan Bishop at Nolan Art and Nick Gomez at Gomez Glass. Both are instructors here at Seneca Studios. Seneca Studios is a nonprofit dedicated to education. We teach classes in 3 different disciplines. Flameworking is one of the disciplines that we offer. They're making some really cool stuff, but we can't teach you how to make that in one of our classes. So don't come in and say, "Ooh, I saw this really awesome hand that was sculpted by Nick and I want Nick to do that." We're happy to teach you how to flame work on, but again, remember, these guys make things look easy, and this stuff is in fact not very easy. So just keep that in mind while you're watching. But we're happy to teach you. We're happy to teach you about this discipline and this process if you are interested. You can always go to our website, senecastudios.org, and look at all of our classes. Again, this is called flame working. 2 of the other disciplines that we offer is kiln forming and glass blowing. And on our website, there's a bunch of really great information as well as pictures to give you an idea of what you can do while here. The glass blowing studio that you see them working in is typically on, and this time of the year usually runs at around 140 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why we usually have it closed down. It also allows us the opportunity to kind of maintain the equipment. If you think about some of these temperatures that we're playing with here, 2300 degrees, 3,000 degrees. You can imagine that the stress that's put on this equipment is rather intense, and so it's really helpful for us to be able to shut down for this month and do some basic repairs so that we can keep everything operational and we don't have any surprises throughout the course of the year. So Nick is working on that hand that you saw. Looks like the finger has a little what's called radicello, or maybe just some color application. Radicello is the process of taking, it's radicello? Oh, Jean's giving me a thumbs up. It's radicello. Radicello is the process of layering lines of glass to get a very specific crisscross pattern that then you can potentially trap bubbles in. And so if you've ever seen, it's a pretty common Venetian technique. If you've ever seen anything that's similar, it looks like a woven, it's like kind of like lines of color that are woven but not textured, and then you trap bubble in between each little woven piece. So I'm assuming this hand is pretty intent because the finger that's pointing has that decorative flare to it, which is really nice. Hard to see at some angles, but at other angles you can kind of see it looks like almost like the hand is pinching, and I believe the collaboration is going to come between the two of these guys. Nolan is sculpting a female form, and Nolan is sculpting a female form, and Nick is sculpting the hand. Oh my gosh, look how gooey that is. It's so great. So borosilicate glass is fantastic, but it loses its heat so quickly. You can build heat in borosilicate pretty easily, but it takes a minute, but it loses heat so quickly. And so you can see when Nolan comes out, it's pretty gooey, but then it very quickly goes back to being not so gooey. And so you can see Nick is adding his little finger to see if he's got the sculpting correct, and Nolan appears to be making maybe a foot. So for those of you who don't know, Seneca Studios has a very small staff, and most of our staff members do things that are out of our wheelhouses, one of which is me. My name is Tatara Siegel. I'm our Education and Outreach Coordinator, and you find me behind the mic today, which for some of you who know us, I ramble very similar to Clifton, except in a different way. But I'm also not super tech savvy when it comes to all this digital gear, and so what we've done is we've attempted to set up an open studio night to test a new way of doing it. And the way we're doing it is that the person who is in fact commenting and talking to you about the process is not in fact in the studio with the makers. And so it's kind of interesting because I talked to the fellas before we started to get an idea of what's going down so that I could best describe to you guys this process. But in true artist form and fashion, things change, and sometimes when you work with glass, things have to change quickly. And so I'm not sure what Nolan is making. He could be making a foot. He could be making a foot. Sorry, let me explain. A foot is the area of a wine glass or a goblet that touches the table. It's a separate piece, and so we call that a foot. And normally it looks kind of like what Nolan's playing with, where it's flared out, but usually not cut. So I'm not sure what he's doing, to be totally honest with you. But here you go. Here's what looks to be like a fluted foot or a tube. And you can see that he's cutting the glass with scissors. This is really a neat, it was always something that was super fascinating to me, because if you get the glass hot enough and the shears that you use, which are the scissors, don't have any wax on them, you can cut the glass, and it almost feels like taking a pair of scissors and cutting silly putty. Has anybody ever done that, where you cut silly putty into little bits? It feels very similar to that, and that's a very interesting sensation. And when you do it with glass, it's even more fun and fascinating because it's glass and not silly putty. But what you're seeing is how quickly the borosilicate will cool down. And so Nolan is constantly cut and then back to the heat and cut and back to the heat. Let's see what Nick's doing. All right, Nick's getting the final touches, what looks like on that finger, to make sure. There he goes. Looks pretty good, buddy. Not bad. Yeah, nice. Nice job, man. Looks good. Looks good. Nice smile. So Seneca Studios, School of Glass, all of our instructors here, we are extremely passionate about what we do. You know, that whole saying, starving artists, is a legitimate statement. Artists aren't artists because they want to make a ton of money. Artists are people who are connected to working with their hands and are connected to a feeling and a movement and an emotion in this process of creation. And so it's nice when you can see artists that work and that are really enjoying what they're doing. And Nick is one of my favorite flame workers to work with because he still has a lot of that excitement when he tries something new, which is what open studios are. This event is all about, is bringing in artists, giving them an opportunity, a platform to express themselves, but also to experiment and try new things with our team or in collaboration with other people. And this is the first time Nick and Nolan have ever worked on a collaborative piece, and as you can tell, they're really engaged in one another. They're engaged and respectful of each other's processes, and they're really having a good time. And so it's always fun from an education standpoint to watch two flame workers really enjoy themselves. I think they're taking a little water break, so I'm going to take a little water break, and I'll get right back to you guys in just a minute. Please drop your comments, questions, anything that you have to say in the Facebook message area, and I'll answer those when I get back, or Heidi will do it on the other end.